In the last video, we saw that broadly there are two categories of khayal compositions, that is the Bada Khayal and the Chota Khayal. And we took a look at the Chota Khayal or the small khayal, which is composed and sung in Madhya or Dhrit Laya, that is at a medium or fast tempo. We saw a variety in terms of their setting in different talas and different mukhadas. In this video, we take a look at the Bada Khayal or the Vilambit Khayal. The compositional form of Vilambit Khayal, sometimes often simply referred to as the Vilambit, can be seen as the heart of the Khayal genre. Now, very simply, the Bada Khayal or the Vilambit Khayal is a Khayal composition that is set in a Vilambit Laya of Teen Tal or Ek Tal or Chhap Tal, etc. And the Laya would be something like this. Suppose it's Teen Tal, it would be Dha, Dhin, Dhin, Dha. So that is the spacing between the matras. So it's leisurely, it's Vilambit. And as we have seen also, the Ektal Vilambit tends to be even more leisurely. So it would be like Dhin, Dhin, Dha, Ge, Ti, Ra, Ki, Da. So that is the first four matras of a Vilambit Ektal of a certain line. It could be less Vilambit or more Vilambit depending on the performer, on the school basically. Now, like other khayals, like other khayal compositions, the text of any Vilambit khayal is usually in Braj and sometimes in Punjabi, and it too has two parts, the Sthayi and the Antara. The Sthayi, like in the Chota Khayal, remains in the lower and the middle ranges or the Mandra and Madhya Saptak, while the Antara goes into the Tar Saptak. I will now demonstrate to highlight some important aspects of the Vilambit Khayal and make the point that it is a pretty unique kind of composition. That is, the slow pace or the tempo of the tal, that is a very Vilambit Laya. It sets unique challenges for the setting of the composition in tala, and we will see that how it is set in tala is somewhat unique. What follows is a Vilambit Khayal in the rag Shuddha Sarang in Vilambit Teen Tal, composed by Ustad Khadim Hussain Khan Sahab of Agra Gharana. Khadim Hussain Khan Sahab happens to be my grand guru in a sense. That is, both my gurus, Pandit Vasantrao Kulkarni and Baban Rao Haldankar, were disciples of Khan Sahab. And so I do trace my lineage in the Agra Gharana to this Ustad. The text of the composition, it is a supplication. It's a prayer to the Sufi saint Nizamuddin Auliya, asking for his grace. The text is like this: Naya Muri Par Karu Tum Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya. And the antara goes like this: Apne sajan par meher ki nazar rakho, tum ho bade garib nawaz. The ancient metaphor of the boat and the challenge of crossing the Bhavasagar, or human existence is compared to a journey in the ocean, and it is the Lord's grace that can get you across. And this metaphor is employed here easily in the context of asking for the grace of a Sufi saint. And the signature of the composer, Khadim Hussain Khan Sahab, appears in the Antara, or the second part of the composition, that is Sajan. Sajan Piya was his takhallus or signature. Now, the demo will use a tabla app so that the tal setting is clear. This is, as I said, in Vilambit Tal of 16 matras. The Mukhada is Naiya Muri Par with a sum on Pa. Naiya Muri Pa. वहाँ पे sum falls on that word Par. Do take a listen. Muri The Vilambit Khayal has an interesting relationship with the Tala, and this can be explained in terms of an ancient distinction between Nibaddha and Anibaddha Sangeet. Now, Nibaddha Sangeet or Nibaddha music is music which is bound, that is Baddha is bound. It could be bound in Tala or it could have, it could be bound in text, etc. And then we have music that is not tied down by anything. It is not bound into a structure by any consideration like rhythm or text. It is free, and it is called Anibaddha. And historically, music making has involved the coming together of Nibaddha and Anibaddha Sangeet, which is something like coming together of composition and improvisation, we can say, but not quite. It's not the same distinction. Now, how is a song bound in Tala? That is, how is it, what can its relationship with the Tala be? There are several layers, several levels at which this relationship works. Now, a song can be and is always contained in a certain number of avartanas of the Tala. And that is a very fundamental way the song can be nibaddha. That is, it is bound. It unfolds within a certain number of avartanas or Tala cycles. But it can be and usually is more in the sense that the parts of the song, that is the syllables, the text, these are held in place by the units of the Tala. That is, the song is bound in Tala by the syllables of the text and the matras of the Tala coming together and creating a pulse, as it were. So, if for instance any song that you could, simple rhymes like Baba, black sheep, have you any wool? Tat, 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 tat. This is a very, very basic way, and you can see the pulse, right? So, the beat and the syllable coincide, right? So, this is where the feel of we can feel the Tala and the matras while the song is unfolding as much as the melody itself. That is also very much part of the experience of the song. And many kinds of song and music are tied down or bound in Tala in this manner. That is, beats and pulses are very much part of the song. They are woven into the song. Now, the Khayal as a composition in general, and the Vilambit in particular, do not exhibit this kind of relationship with the Tala, this kind of being bound in Tala. There is a certain looseness in this respect. Of course, Khayal compositions all unfold or are contained within a certain number of avartanas of one or the other tala, but they do not exhibit what may be called a syllabic relationship with tala. They do not have this additional level of being bound in tala. To make this clear, I will demonstrate again with the same Vilambit Khayal. First, I will sing it in a manner where there is this more direct and simple relationship of the bandish with the tala, when most syllables of the bandish coincide with the matra of the tala. This is not how we sing it. It's more, as I said, the matras and the syllables of the song keep missing each other. While rendering the Vilambit, we strive for a seamless experience by letting the matras of the tala slip in between the syllables of the text. Or in other words, we weave the composition into the tala cycle but without latching on to every matra. Of course, landing on the sum using the mukhada is imperative, and most musicians also acknowledge another point in the song text that must coincide with a matra in the middle of the cycle. Here, for example, in this composition, Nizamuddin, the deen falls on the khali, that is the 10th matra. This is something that is also part of the structure of the composition as I learnt it. But apart from these 2 points, that is the sum and some matra in the middle of the cycle, generally the composition will glide between the matras, so that there is very few places where the syllable of the composition and the matra actually come together. So, most matras of the Tala cycle will slip between the text syllables so that they are not highlighted. Or, as I said, we can say that the syllables of the text fall in between the matras of the Tala, except at the sum, where it's absolutely essential that the syllable of the song and the matra come together with precision. And also, because the other syllables fall between the matras and are not accentuated, the landing on the sum is more accentuated. That coming together of the text of the song and the tal cycle is felt more intensely, because elsewhere in most other parts of the composition this kind of coming together is not found. And because it is not set very tightly or very precisely or very rigorously in tal, with a determination of where each syllable falls in the Tala cycle, there is a certain looseness to the Vilambit Khayal. And each time it is rendered, there is likely to be very slight subtle changes. It is more like the sthai or the antara is stretched to fill the avartan. In fact, the expression used is sthai bharna. It is to fill out the sthai. In contrast, in the case of Dhrupad or Carnatic compositions, these compositions are bound more tightly in Tala. They are more what we call syllabic. So, the Vilambit Khayal challenges the Nibadha-Anibadha distinction in an interesting way. It is in Tala, but is not tied down to it like a it's not bound in it to the extent that a Carnatic Kriti is, or even a Dhrupad composition is. If we think of the meeting points of the syllables of the composition with the Tala matras as stitches or tacks, then there are very few tacks. So, it gives a seamless experience. In fact, this is a very good metaphor. Now, what is a seam? We speak of seamless experience. So, what is a seam? It is where two pieces of fabric are brought together and stitched together. Now, here we have the composition and the tal theka. They are brought together in the khayal rendition, but there are very few stitches or tacks. So, there is a seamless quality to the Vilambit, because there are very few places where the syllable of the bandish has to fall on the matra of the tal. The Tala and the bandish run parallel, as it were, meeting only at a few points, necessarily at the sum. So, this is actually a subtler relationship. It is not unconnected to the Tala, absolutely not. There is definitely a certain awareness. The Tala flow is reflected in the way the Vilambit unfolds. But that is a subtler relationship, not one where the syllable and matra just come together. It is as I said, there is very much a connection, but it is subtler. Now, the second part of the Vilambit composition is called antara, like in the Chota Khayal, and during performance, usually what happens is the sthai is presented, and then there is a lot of improvisation or what is called rag vistar around it. And after that, as usually when the tarasa or the upper sa is explode and you hit the tarsa, after that the antara is rendered. So, typically the composition as a whole is not rendered together. Whereas the sthai and antara are separated considerably. Except, in one school, the Atroli Jaipur, where the sthai and antara are rendered together fully before they embark upon vistar or improvisation. So, the bandish we just heard, Naya Muri Par Karo in Shuddha Sarang and Vilambit Khayal was a prayer to the Sufi saint Nizamuddin Auliya. There are many other themes and other talas, of course, in the Vilambit Khayal. So let us just have a sample of these. First, we take Rag Miyan Malhar. Malhar is usually a celebration of rains. It's associated with the season of monsoon. And compositions in these ragas. Malhar is also a family, right? It's a type. It's a Malhar Ang, Malhar Prakara. There are many kinds of Malhar ragas. So, compositions in these ragas often describe the monsoon, and in fact it's also believed that singing a Malhar properly can even bring down the rains. It can cause a downpour. Now, in a twist to this traditional association of Malhar with the presence of rains, Pandit Kumar Gandharva has composed a Vilambit Khayal which bemoans the absence of rains. The text goes like this: Kari Megha Barasit Nahi. That is, dark clouds come and pass without giving rains. This is a common experience in the drier parts of the country. The text is like this: Kari Megha Barasit Nahi, Hari Hari Doob Sukha Gayo, Hahakar Macho Chahu Or. This is Thai. Dark clouds pass without giving rain. Green stalks have all dried up. Despair all around. This is in Vilambit Khayal. Typically, as I said, Vilambit Khayal is rendered at a much slower pace than Vilambit Khayal. Now let us look at another theme, another kind of laya in Vilambit, a composition in Rag Nand. Here the laya is much faster than the previous Vilambit. It is still called Vilambit only. This is also Vilambit Tintal. Let's listen to this Thai. Rag Nand. This is we call it Vilambit Tintal. It's a little fast Vilambit. This is actually a description of it, of the innocence and charm of a young groom and bride, which is actually a common theme in khayals. You find many compositions that describe the situation of marriage. Typically the beauty, the charm of the bride and the groom. Now we have seen a composition in devotion another about rains or absence of rains, about young brides and grooms. Now we look at love, Shringara. In this bandish, the Naika, the heroine, it's the voice of a woman. She is pining for her lover. This is in the rag Multani and again in Ektal, Vilambit Khayal. She says, Muri sudha leho, beg tuma aan, mure gunavanta balavanta. That is, you have taken away my sanity. Muri sudha leho, beg tuma aan. Come quickly to me. Then the Antara says, your Gunidas has gone mad. There is bhayo hai, baveru ab tumaro Gunidas. Kachu sujhat nahi, mure piya prana. Your Gunidas has gone mad and knows not what to do. So come quickly, my piya prana. Now this is a composition of Pandit Jagannath Bua Purohit, who also is my grand guru. Pandit Vasantrao Kulkarni was also a disciple of Pandit Jagannath Bua Purohit. And Jagannath Bua Purohit was one of the most highly regarded Vagyakaras of the 20th century. And his takhallus or signature was Gunidas. And here, as you would have noticed in the Antara, the signature is there. Bayo hai baveru ab tumaro Gunidas. But there is also the signature Pranpiya. Here it's not a signature, it is a reference to Vilayat Hussain Khan Sahib, who was the guru of Jagannath Bua Purohit. So, in this bandish, and in most of his other bandishes, Jagannath Bua Purohit gives expression to his own yearning to be with his guru. It's like he's singing to his guru. In fact, this is a very famous guru-shishya relationship that's been captured in compositions. And we have other instances too, including compositions composed in response to an earlier one, as a reply to or a take on the idea expressed in an earlier composition. So, Khayal compositions are not just abstract compositions to capture a facet of a raga, which they necessarily are, but they are also rooted in lived experiences and feelings of the composers, rooted in the community of musicians and connoisseurs. Composers call out to each other, respond to each other, throw challenges, accept them, and so on in these compositions. Muri Sudhaleho in Multani, Vilambit Khayal. We also have Vilambit Khayal set in Chaptal and Rupak, though these are much shorter time spans. That is, the duration between matras is much shorter than Ek Tal or even Tin Tal. So this is a composition in Vilambit Chaptal of 10 matras, and actually this is a composition from the Dhrupad repertoire which has been adapted and repurposed by Khayal singers. Tu maraba, tu sahiba. That's the first line of the composition, and this has been memorably rendered by Pandit Bhimsen Joshi. This is in Rag Brindavani Sarang, and a link to his performance of this composition of Brindavani Sarang around this composition is given below. Please do listen to it. Let's also look at a Vilambit Rupak composition in the rag Hindol. The composition is a description of Holi. So the Mukhada starts on the fourth beat actually. 2, 3. But we always vary it all the time. It could be even, you could start it on the 5th beat or even the 6th beat. So, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I started on the 5th. Now we will start on the 6th. 5. So when I present, when I do the Vistar, the Mukhada can be taken at various places. The sum, of course, has to fall on Basan. Basan. That is not negotiable. You can't change that. But the Mukhada, where you start, how you start it, that is all very variable. Basan. So, so this was a brief look at the Vilambit Khayal, which, as I said, is a very unique kind of composition. And we also looked at a few themes in these compositions, and we had a sample of Vilambit Khayals in different talas. In the next video, we will look at some other kinds of composition that are used in Khayal, that is Khayal the genre. We have looked at Chota Khayal and Bada Khayal, which are the primary compositional forms that are used in Khayal the genre, but we do have definitely, there's one other very prominent, commonly encountered form, which is the Tarana. We will take a look at that very quickly in the next video.